This is really hard to hold. I'm gonna put it down now. Hello everyone. My name is Shelby. Welcome back to my channel, Grace with Books. Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about the best books of 2019, in my opinion. These are 10 books that have really stuck with me throughout the year. They have been striking and well written and have just struck me emotionally. So I'm so excited to get to share them with you. As I said before, there are 10 books on this list, so in order to try to keep it as clear and concise as possible, I'm going to give a very short summary and then go straight into my thoughts on the books. I'm going to try to be non-spoilery in this section. If I do end up saying anything that is a spoiler in post-editing, I will put a little symbol like this in, and if you see that symbol, just skip until you don't see it anymore, but I'm going to try to be as non-spoilery as possible because I really want for you guys to get a chance to experience these books, and I want you to watch this video so you know what books you may want to try next year. Okay, let's go right into my list. Also, these books are in no particular order. These are just 10 books that I think were really great. The first book I want to talk about is Nevernight by J. Kristoff. This book I read, I believe, in June, and it was a very intense new adult fantasy book. It's about Mia Corvair, who after the death of her family, she becomes an assassin in order to avenge her family and kill those who have wronged her. Nevernight. I read Nevernight after I read the Illumini series, so I was already familiar with J. Kristoff's work, but here it just really shines. His writing style is very unique. The narrator of this book is omnipotent, and it is written as though like a historian is recording down history almost. There are footnotes in the book, and you follow that little asterisk to the bottom where there's more information. So there's not a lot of setup to the book. You sort of go right in, and as it goes, the book goes along, you are given more information about the world that the book takes place in, if that makes sense. I think the first line of this book is really what made me fall in love with it, and it is, "People often shit themselves when they die." How can you not love a book when that's the first line of it? It is just so well thought out, and I read the entire series this year, so I know that things in this book become very important in like the third book that you would never have thought of. It was just so clever the way he wrote this entire series. It was such a great book. So yes, Nevernight by J. Kristoff. The next book that I really loved this year is actually a contemporary. Whoa, surprise! And it is If There's No Tomorrow by Jennifer L. Armentrout. She can do no wrong in my eyes, and I loved this book. I actually got this book in March at a Polycon, which is a convention that Jennifer runs every year, and it's so much fun. And I got this book signed by her, which is really cool. It says my name there and everything. It's such a good book, and I've met her quite a few times now, so really sweet person. If There's No Tomorrow tells the story of Lena, who is a senior in high school, and she sort of has her entire life figured out. She's excited about her future. She's ready to begin her senior year, and she has all these plans and just things to look forward to until one action, one choice changes the course of her entire life. Suddenly she is someone she doesn't recognize, and she has to figure out how to sort of deal with what her life has become. And it was extremely emotional at times. Like the twist that you think is like, there's no indication of what that choice is until you get to it in this book. Like it was just so unexpected, and I think it worked better that way, and I think that shock value really added to the enjoyment of the book for me, because reading this book, it just seemed like a very normal contemporary romance, girl trying to tell her childhood friend that she loves him, and then boom, the entire plot changes in one fell swoop, and it's so emotional and raw and really just added to my overall enjoyment and love of this book. So this is If There's No Tomorrow. It's so hard not to spoil this book, which is why I have been extremely vague in my description, but her writing and just that twist in the middle is really what made me love this book so much. The next book I'm going to talk about is Finale by Stephanie Garber. Yes, I finally finished the Caraval series. It was spectacular because usually final books aren't always amazing, and in this case it was. Caraval is the story of two sisters who get swept up in this game called Caraval, where you sort of have to figure out puzzles and mysteries in order to win, and it's a very dangerous game. In the first book we followed Scarlett through her journey through Caraval. The second book book, we follow Donatella, and this book, sort of the culmination of those two books, we follow both sisters as they fight against the gods and the fates in order to make their world a safe place. So finale is a whole spectacular event, and obviously I'm not going to get into the specific summary of finale in case you have not read the Caraval series and are planning to, but I loved finale. First of all, I loved prior two books we only saw the perspective of one sister per book, and I liked really the dual perspective in this book to see where they were both coming from. I thought the love interests were really good in this book, and I thought the whole structure of the plot was just really well done. I adore Stephanie Garber. I cannot believe this is a debut series. Like, it's simply wonderful for a debut author, and I'm just so happy with how this series ended, a series that had become so beloved to me in such a short amount of time, and it's just a book that has stuck with me throughout the entire year. Like, I keep going back to it, so it is just a fabulous book, and that is Finale. Next up is the second and final contemporary on my list, Paper Girl by Cindy R. Wilson. This book was so emotional specifically for me as someone with anxiety. It was just so touching. It tells the story of a girl named Zoe who is afraid to leave her house. She is in high school and the world has just become too overwhelming for her to live in, so she stays in her house in a room that she has decorated with paper, planets, and stars, creating a solar system of her own. She is a paper girl in a paper room, and one spark from the outside can set everything on fire, hence, you know, the name of the book and the cover. Then her mother hires a tutor to come help her with her schoolwork. He is a boy she had already had a crush on before she stopped going outside, and he opens her up to strange feelings and things that she has sort of been shutting out of herself. This book was just so touching. I loved watching her journey through her agoraphobia and sort of overcoming it. I loved that it had positive representation of therapy because I'm a big advocate for therapy and I think it's a wonderful thing, and it was just so emotional. It was just a really good book that I related to a lot in terms of the panic attacks and the anxiety, and I thought it was really well represented here, so I'm really happy with Paper Girls by Cindy Wilson. The next book on this list is The Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. I buddy read this earlier this year with Sadie Joyful. Go check her out. She's wonderful, a really great friend, and it was so good. I had never watched K-pop before or K-dramas, and I know this book has been compared to a lot of those, but honestly it made me want to go watch them because I adored the setting and the plot lines of this book. This book tells the story of Gu Myung, who is a gumiho, or nine-tailed fox, and she feeds off the energy of men. Her and her mother have sort of lived this solitary life their whole lives until she meets a boy named Ji-hoon, who actually discovers she's a gumiho, and she's trying to push him away and he's trying to come into her life, and it's just this wonderful, dramatic, fantasy paranormal book. This book was sort of unlike anything I had ever read before. I had never really delved that deep into Korean mythology, and it was a really interesting subject to learn about. I also loved that Kat Cho had snippets of gumiho legend throughout the pages of the book, because for someone like me who is unfamiliar with the gumiho legend, it was really nice to see little pages like this where it tells you a little bit about the gumiho myths, so I feel a little more caught up and educated as I read it. The book had a bunch of twists and turns. They went ways I never expected. Some of the plot twists I figured out halfway through, but overall I think it was a really good book, and I cannot wait for the second one to come out. So this is another book that really stuck with me throughout the year. The next book is an obvious favorite for so many reasons, and it is Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This was probably one of my most highly anticipated releases of 2019, and it totally lived up to the hype for me. I absolutely adored it. I have a vlog describing all of my feelings, and I will also link that below and above if you want to go check that out. Queen of Nothing was really just a book that well concluded the series of The Folk of the Air by Holly Black, and it was just so good. The Wicked King left off on such a cliffhanger that I had no idea how she was going to pull off this book, and it's not a long book. They're pretty short books, so it's hard to imagine how Holly Black was going to fit in everything within this time frame, but she did, and she did it so well, and the book's ending really, I felt, gave every character what they deserved. So I'm really happy with how she ended the series. I'm really happy with the series as a whole. Please go check out The Cruel Prince if that's something you're interested in. I think it's a really great piece piece of fantasy literature, and it has fae and enemies to lovers, and it's really just one of my favorite series of all time. The next book on my best books list is one that's very popular this year, and I completely agree, and if you don't think it's gonna live up to the hype, I thought so too, but it was really good, and that is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. Scythe takes place in a utopia world where we have all cured death. You can basically live forever if you choose to, but in order to keep the population under control, society appoints scythes who basically kill in order to maintain population levels worldwide. Scythes have a very strict code that they follow. They can't just go off on killing sprees, and they have to be trained before they can become scythes, and it's a whole process. And this book tells the story of two apprentices to a scythe, Citra and Rowan, and their journey into learning what it is to become a scythe and going and learning about the corruption that really lies beneath in the society that they live in. And it was just such a fabulous book. A criticism I see a lot is that it's very slow sometimes, and there's some times where it doesn't feel like there's a lot of plot happening, but I think it was pretty essential to the whole story. I think it was really important to see how Scythe Faraday taught Citra Rowan. I think it was really important to see his tactics because that influences the people they are by the end of the book, and it was so good. I haven't read the final book in the series yet, The Toll, but I have read the second book, and I also loved the second book in this series, and I cannot wait to finish reading it, but I'm also going to be really sad because Scythe has just been such a wonderful book and so unique how Neil Shusterman has gone about writing this book. So while I agree with some criticisms that it's slow in the middle, I ultimately felt like this book had so many important things to say about our society nowadays and what we value, and just an interesting look on the world as a whole. So I loved Scythe. The next book was the newest book from two of my favorite authors, Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and that is Aurora Rising. I did a whole book talk for that. I'll link it above or below, but Aurora Rising was just wonderful sci-fi book. It tells a story about a girl named Ori who, after being in cryosleep for 100 years, wakes up in a future that she is virtually clueless about. She becomes a target for the national police and is sent into a whole adventure with 5 other cadets from the Aurora Academy. I love the tagline for this book. They're not the heroes we wanted, they're just the ones we could find. And it's really true. It's really a mishmash of 6 people who really shouldn't get along by any circumstances, but it works, and it is such a great sci-fi fantasy adventure trying to figure out who Ori is, where she came from, and why she has these mysterious powers. And it was just such a ride, and it's so good. And like, if you've read Illumina, you know that Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff really do like to work in visual mediums as well. And while this book is a more traditional styled written book, you do still have some of the classic Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff pages that are a little more different and belong in that kind of world. So I love that they have sort of tastes of those throughout the book, but yeah, Aurora Rising was just simply a wonderful book. Ooh, got 2 more. Okay. The next book on this list is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. Also have a book talk for this one. I really loved it. Shelby Mahurin, this is her debut book, and Serpent and Dove tells the story of Lou, who is a witch on the run from her coven, and Reed, who is a witch hunter. By some unfortunate circumstances, they have to get married, and it is an enemies to lovers, slow burn, witch hunter romance, and it is so good. First of all, this is a new adult book. This is not a young adult book, so don't read this if you're not ready for that. I loved the witty banter, the slow appreciation that Lou and Reed end up having for each other. The side characters were just monsters on their own. They were amazingly well thought out and written. This was just such a well done book, and I rave more about that obviously in my review, but I had to put this on the list because Serpent and Dove was really a book that I had also been waiting for throughout the year and really did live up to the hype for me. I know there's been tons of mixed reviews, and it sort of just depends on your personal feelings, but I personally loved this book. The final book of my best books on this list is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I loved this book. This actually came in the first fairy loot box I ever got. It has the blue sprayed edge edges, and it's so pretty. I'll say this because I said this in my worst books video, but I think it's so funny that I have 2 books from Margaret Rogerson, one of them on my best books list and one of them on my worst books list. I just think that's really strange. So this is the second book she's written, and it's a standalone fantasy epic novel about a girl named Elizabeth who has basically been raised in a library. But these are not just any ordinary libraries, these are magical libraries that the books basically come alive. She has been taught all her life to fear sorcerers and the magic they possess. But when she gets accused of a crime that she did not commit, a sorcerer comes to take her to her trial, and this whole adventure starts off. That was a horrible summary. I'm so sorry. I also did a book talk for this one. Go check it out. Okay. First of all, what kind of book lover would I be if I did not appreciate this book about libraries and books? It was so well thought out. I loved the whole world and how there were libraries stationed all around the kingdom, and that librarians were these like force of nature. I loved the main character. I loved watching her discover who she was and how she came to be living in the library her whole life. I loved our love interest in this book, Nathaniel. I thought he was so well done, as was his demonic servant, who is my favorite character, I'm pretty sure, in this book. And it was just such a magical adventure. It was just fun, magical, heartwarming, and since it's a standalone novel, like by the end of the story is the ending, and that was sort of nice because you don't have to wait for any cliffhangers to get resolved or anything. Like, the end of the book is the end of the book, and it was just so good. So I was in love with Sorcery of Thorns this year. And those were my favorite books of 2019. This is really hard to hold. I'm gonna put it down now. As I've said before, as the year comes to a close, I'll be putting out a bunch of like wrap up content, so be sure to check out my worst books video that I already have up. Yeah, so let me know in the comments if you agree with any of my picks for the best books of 2019, if you would add any to this list, and I hope you guys have a great and wonderful day. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Hit the notification bell if you want to get updates on when I post. I post every single Monday and Thursday, and I love you guys so much. You're the reason I do this. Okay, bye!